What's up, everybody? Eric here, Mr. Fired Up Wealth. Today is going to be the third video in a series that we're doing on the top 10 global international e-commerce growth stocks. So we did the top 10 already. I announced the top 10. I asked the community which stocks they wanted deep dives in. Last week we did Mercado Libre. This week it's going to be C Limited, ticker is SE. You're going to want to see this one. Stay tuned. It is time to do what we do on Fired Up Wealth, and that is research stocks. Sometimes we go deeper than other times, and of course, I can always go deeper, but I'm going to bring you a deep dive and as concise as I possibly can. You're going to want to watch this entire video. Please subscribe to the channel if this stuff is interesting to you, because this is what I'm bringing all the time, twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe, like, and comment. So today we're going to talk about C Limited. Now, this is the three-headed monster, and I'll explain here in a couple minutes what I mean by the three-headed monster and break the company down for you. Before we do that, let's look at some macroeconomics. Let's look at some stats and see what we're getting into in Southeast Asia. Online boom. E-commerce is the fastest growing sector in Southeast Asia as a $100 billion web economy. You can see the growth from 2015 to 2025. That's estimated. So think of 2019 to 2025. That's massive growth. The black color there represents e-commerce, and you can see that's massive growth. Online travel is the blue, ride hailing is the red, online media is the yellow. Another one, so Southeast Asia rising. Indonesia, this is important. We're going to get to this later in the video. Indonesia is the biggest contributor to the internet's economy growth in the region for Southeast Asia. Now, this chart here is showing figures referring to gross merchandise value. You can see Indonesia 2019 to 2025 estimated 40 billion to 133 billion, just completely dwarfs the rest of these countries. And of course, C Limited is involved in all these countries, so it's important for us to take a look. Malaysia, 11 billion to 26 billion. Philippines, 7 billion to 25 billion in 2025. Singapore is going to go from 12 billion to 27 billion estimated. Thailand, 16 billion to 50 billion. And Vietnam, 12 billion to 43 billion. All right, let's look at eSports, because this is going to be another part of the three-headed monster. You can see revenue worldwide from 2019 to 2024. You've got nice growth there. That's going to continue to grow and an important segment for C Limited. So if you remember from last time, fintech is an important part of Mercado Libre's growth in the future. What about C Limited? They've got something called SeaMoney. And if you look at Southeast Asia, it has emerged as a fintech hotspot with compound annual growth rate of 55%. So you do have some growth in Southeast Asia on the fintech side as well. So here it is, the three-headed monster, so C Limited. So what am I talking about? Those of you that know the company already have an idea of what I'm getting at here. So you've got Garena, that stands for Gaming Arena. That is going to be their digital entertainment platform. That's their first pillar. That was the first pillar that they started back in 2009, and they've grown since that into the other pillars. So this last quarter, we had 1.1 billion bookings. You can see the growth. That's massive growth from 0.5 in US billion dollars to 1.1, 117.4%. That's massive, very impressive growth. This last quarter was a blowout quarter for C Limited. Very impressive stuff. So next, Free Fire. This is the #1 highest grossing mobile game in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and India for 2021 Q1, maintaining the leading position for the past seven consecutive quarters in Latin America and Southeast Asia, and 2 consecutive quarters now in India. It's got a lot of momentum. It's been around for a little while, and it continues to grow. It's in 130 plus markets. And I'm going to show you Free Fire later on in the video. So Shopee is the next head in the three-headed monster. This is a pillar for, of course, e-commerce. And by average MAUs, this is from the last quarter, the total time spent in the app on Android in the shopping category for Southeast Asia, Indonesia, and Taiwan for 2021 Q1. And I'm going to get to some detailed numbers about each country that Shopee is in. I'm also even going to read you some comments, some basically reviews from members of the Fired Up Wealth community that are in Discord, that live in Singapore. They're going to give us their unbiased opinion of Shopee and compare it to some of the competitors. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that part of the video. So Shopee also had 922.3 million this last quarter in GAAP revenue. You can see the growth, 250.4%. Blowout numbers here. It's starting to grow, and they're using Garena to fuel that, and I'll explain more what I mean later in the video. So moving along, we've got SeaMoney. If you follow the channel, I've mispronounced that one several times before. I've got it down though, guys. Now it's SeaMoney. There's no monkey. So SeaMoney, this is their fintech platform. So this past quarter, $3.4 billion in mobile wallet total payment volume for Q1 2021, up over 200% compared to a year earlier. Very impressive numbers and growth on this part of the three-headed monster as well. So all three of the heads of the monster are firing on all cylinders. What else? Over 26.1 million quarterly paying users for mobile wallet services for Q1 2021. That's up over 145% compared to a year earlier. Again, very impressive numbers. Some of this might be fueled by the pandemic. The question is, how much of it? And it's hard to know. But let's dig further. All right, so that's the three-headed monster just from a high level. You've got the digital entertainment, you've got the e-commerce, and you got the fintech. And this is something that not a lot of people talk about. And it's interesting because I've read lots of other deep dives. I've watched other videos. I've read commentary across the internet. And I never seem to find this. I kind of stumbled into this, just doing my research. I stumbled across this. But they actually own a soccer team. So Sea Limited is a holding company, and it actually owns this football club. So this says Sea has assumed full ownership of Singapore Premier League, that's SPL, Home United for an undisclosed sum. I couldn't find the dollar amount anywhere. It's undisclosed, which is interesting because if it's a publicly traded company, you think you'd be able to find that information, but I couldn't. If you find it, let me know in the comments. Drop me a comment. Tell me if you know how much they paid for it. As part of the takeover, Sea has renamed the football club to the Lion City Sailors and introduced a new kit. And they've actually been spending some money. So Forrest Lee is the founder and chairman, and he's been putting some money in. I saw one transfer for close to $3 million. So he's trying to bring some excitement. So anyways, I thought that was an interesting fact. Just a random fact that a lot of people don't know, but they actually own a football club as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, I'm actually going to break down the e-commerce from each of these countries. Now, this is really interesting because if you look at this, this is Q1 of 2019, of course, before the pandemic. And if you look at each of these countries that Sea is doing business in, they're doing business in other countries as well. This is just Southeast Asia. They've also expanded to Latin America. We'll talk more about that later in the video. And if you've already watched Mercado Libre, you know that Sea Limited is already in Latin America. But there's actually been some news since I made that video, some additional news around Latin America that I'll share with you here in a few minutes. Now, this is just focused on Southeast Asia. You've got Indonesia, you got Malaysia, you got all the different countries you can see on your screen. Now, look where Shopee is in each of those. They're the third in Indonesia, Malaysia, they're 2, Philippines 2, Thailand 2, Vietnam, they're first, and then Singapore, they're actually third. And you see Lazada a lot. Okay, so Lazada, what's going on with that? Big competitor. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at Q1 2021 and see if Shopee has made any progress since 2019. Okay, first let's look at Malaysia. So now look at this. This is Q1 of 2021. This is from iPrice Insights. And Merchant, the first one, and it's by a lot. Look at the monthly web visits. It's Shopee. It is now number 1, Lazada number 2, and then PG Mall, and there's a bunch below it. eBay is on there. There's a ton, but I mean, the Shopee is just dwarfing in terms of monthly web visits. Now, if you look across it, you can also see Twitter versus Instagram versus Facebook, etc. And you can see that, there's variances depending on what stat you look at. But in terms of just App Rank Store, Play Store rank, monthly web visits, Shopee in Malaysia is on top. All right, so let's look at Vietnam. And what's interesting too is they have different sites for each country, different languages, currencies, of course, and it's tailored. So they're not exactly the same, but you can see Shopee VN for Vietnam, also number 1 for Q1 2021. All right, Philippines, how are we doing in the Philippines? Shopee number 1, Lazada number 2. That's 3 for 3. Thailand, Shopee number 1, Lazada number 2. That's 4 for 4. All right, we're seeing a trend here. Singapore, 5 for 5. Shopee's number 1. Lazada's number 2. Okay, let's look at one more. Let's look at a 6th market, 6th country, and see if we get a clean sweep. All right, this is Indonesia. You can see Lazada is number 4. So where is Shopee? Uh-oh, Shopee is number 2. So, we didn't get our clean sweep, and Shopee's number 2. What's going on with this Tokopedia? If you don't know the Indonesian market, you might not know who Tokopedia is. Do you know what Gojek is? I'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so I learned a lot about this when I was doing my research for Sea Limited, but Gojek, this is an Indonesian company. It's kind of like a DoorDash. It's a hybrid type company, but it does a lot of deliveries, right? they are going to merge with Tokopedia. Tokopedia is the e-commerce platform, also an Indonesian company. Now, what's interesting is Gojek is 18th on this year's CNBC Disruptor 50 list. It was number 10 on the 2020 list. So what's going on with this merger? So GoTo Group is what it's going to be called. They're going to be combining Gojek and Tokopedia to create a new company called GoTo Group. There's going to be 100 million active users when they combine these two apps together, these two companies together. Over 11 million merchants, over 2 million drivers, mostly motorcycles. Now, 2% of Indonesia's $1 trillion GDP will be represented by this company, GoTo Group. So it's going to be pretty big. And I think it's a threat. It already is a threat when you think of Tokopedia. We already showed you the previous slide that Shopee is number 2 and not number 1. But combining these two companies together with the management and the infrastructure is going to be a big threat. There are a lot of unbanked citizens in Indonesia. There's a lot of islands. There's thousands of islands within the chain, and there's not a lot of infrastructure. What I've decided to do is I'm going to create a bonus video because I have a lot of content on this. And instead of adding, an extra 10 minutes of content for this one IPO, I'm going to make a bonus video, and it's going to release on the channel next week. So you're going to want to subscribe and make sure you don't miss this video. This is going to be an IPO that you're going to be able to buy later in 2021. Now, we looked at some stats earlier. We know that Southeast Asia's internet economy is booming. It's growing, right? And you can see, well, this is from CNBC, and it's showing growth from 2020, a massive growth to 2025. And you can see the light green color is Indonesia, and that's a big part. We showed you in the beginning of the video. Indonesia is a very important part of Southeast Asia's growth, and it's a very important part of Sea Limited's business. So this is very important for Sea Limited as an investor. You need to understand this new company. So essentially, GoTo is going to combine these two companies. You can see how the new management is going to lay out, but it's kind of like mixing together a, Indonesian DoorDash, a Square, a PayPal, an Amazon, all these companies into one conglomerate. When you think of how diverse and how complicated the infrastructure can be with all the islands, this could be a pretty big deal, and it's something we need to dig into further. Now, in the Mercado Libre video, we did talk about Shopee, we talked about Sea Limited, and we mentioned that Sea Limited is in Brazil, and recently in Q1 of 2021, they entered Mexico. Now, since I've made that video on Mercado Libre, and if you haven't watched that video, go back and take a look. There's a whole series, so make sure you subscribe, check out the playlist. But since that, this is very recent news, this is from a few days ago, sees Shopee to launch in Chile and Colombia. Now, we don't have a ton of details on this, but essentially, they're going to be launching their business in Colombia and Chile, where it plans to offer online sales via its website and localize apps according to social media pages on the news services reviewed by Reuters. That's all we know for now, but it's important to note because we're talking about competition. We're talking about competition in places like Indonesia. This could be an important part of Shopee's business for that expansion plan. Now, what you're seeing here on your screen is from last year's annual report. I think it does a good job of breaking down the three-headed monster, so let's take a look at this. So the first bullet you see is going to be Garena. It says, in our digital entertainment business, our primary source of revenue is the sale of in-game items. We focus on developing and curating the best content and localizing that content to cater to the tastes and preferences of each of our unique markets. So they're not making one game that's like one size fits all. They're trying to actually cater and customize to each individual market, which I think is very smart. We maximize the in-game experience, user experience, to keep our users highly engaged and increase the likelihood of in-game spending so as to maximize revenue. To do so, we provide a high-quality entertainment experience, adopt effective pricing strategies for each market and game, and leverage our platform's cross-selling tools to support long-term user engagement. So the second bullet there is going to be the Shopee ECommerce. It says, in our e-commerce business, we closely monitor the number of transactions per buyer. We optimize the assortment of our product categories on our marketplace and build convenient tools to attract sellers. We monetize our e-commerce business mainly by offering sellers paid advertising services, charging transaction-based fees, and charging for certain value-added services. As our e-commerce marketplace grows, we may consider other monetization methods in order to capture additional revenue streams. We also purchase products from manufacturers and third parties and sell them directly to buyers on our Shopee platform. think it does a good job of kind of summing up the e-commerce business, the second head of the monster. I'd like to interrupt this broadcast for a special announcement. I want to mix it up here a little bit. So this is something to keep an eye on too. So the Amazon of South Korea, everything's always the Amazon. Amazon of South Korea, Coupang Corporation enters Singapore, and they're now hiring. South Korea's e-commerce giant Coupang is making its first overseas events by entering the Singapore market after 11 years of operation. Coupang has apparently been seeking ways to enter Singapore since last July. Following news of the expansion here, the New York Stock Exchange listed company has also started hiring rounds in Singapore. They're hiring in Singapore. They're growing, they're building, they're expanding from South Korea to Singapore. Is this a threat for Sea Limited? Definitely something to keep an eye on as investors. And the third head of the three-headed monster is going to be the SeaMonkey, no, the SeaMoney, the digital fintech business. So it says, in our digital financial services business, we mainly monetize by charging commissions to third-party merchants with respect to our mobile wallet services and by earning interest from borrowers with respect to our consumer credit business. We continually expand the number of use cases that accept our mobile wallet services to create greater convenience for our users. We believe that increasing the variety of use cases, together with our efforts to increase our mobile wallet user numbers and engagement, will lead to increases in the number of transactions through our mobile wallet business, and in turn, the gross transaction value and commission income. So those are the three heads, the three-headed monster. I think it does a good job of just explaining to you which each pillar of the business does. So this here is from the annual report from 2020, and I want to read this because it's important. In April, our flagship Garena World event, if you haven't heard of this, it's a really big deal, generated an online attendance of 1.2 million and more than 40 million online views across Facebook, YouTube, and other social media platforms and channels. During the fully virtual two-day event that was hosted in Thailand, we used a combination of augmented reality, visual effects, animation, and other technologies to provide our fans with an interactive and immersive experience. For example, we hosted a dedicated live streaming platform where viewers can customize their avatars and express their views through chats. We also welcomed 39 teams from 9 regions to compete in our online game tournaments. This event demonstrated our ability to adapt to fast-changing environments and to successfully deepen engagement with our users through technology. Okay, so Garena, this is a monster, and for me personally, if I think of Mercado Libre, you know, it's an e-commerce platform. The thing that's exciting for me, I think, is the banking, the fintech for Mercado Libre. When you think of SeaMoney, it's a very small portion of Sea Limited's business. You think of Shopee, I think it's where the future growth can lie, but the machine that drives the engine, kind of like when you think of Amazon. Amazon Web Services help drive the engine. Garena is that machine that drives the engine. And what I like about this with Sea Limited, you think of Mercado Libre, the fintech part, they're still kind of ramping up. This is where they started in 2009 when they started Sea Limited. This is how it all started. And this has always been their main fuel, their main driver. And they're growing the business outside of that to expand and to basically take these users and to monetize them in different arenas and different areas. So this part of Sea Limited's business is very important. In my opinion, it's the most important pillar, probably especially short term, but even longer term. So I'm going to give you a lot of detailed breakdown information on Garena. All right, so Garena is short for Gaming Arena. It's Southeast Asia's largest gaming business. Revenues of more than $3.2 billion US. Garena is around $2 billion in EBITDA right now. It could grow 5x to 10 billion EBITDA by 2026. And just as an example, a 15x would result in a per share value for Sea Limited of $300 for Garena alone. Of course, that'll take some time, but it's trading for less than $300 a share now. It takes some time to get to 15x. But I think it's an interesting stat just to look at that even if you own this part, this pillar of the business, longer term, it has amazing growth opportunities. Now, they've grown their EBITDA 23x in the past 4 years. Now, I don't think they can keep that same momentum, but you think about that, you know, 23x in 4 years, and above that, I'm talking about a 15x. How long will it take, or how many years will it take for them to get another 15x off that 23x? This has been almost exclusively from Free Fire, which is a pro, but also potentially a risk that we'll talk about later. Free Fire has over 500 million downloads globally, and it's available in 130 plus markets. Okay, so we just talked about Garena and how much opportunity there is. So I think it's important to take a look at the website and just see what's going on with Garena and some of their games. Of course, eSports is a massive part of Garena. And if you watch any of their tournaments, what's cool about it is a lot of them are mobile platform tournaments. So you think of Southeast Asia, you think of Asia in general, the majority of people like to have their phone, use their phone, and so they're on the go, they're using mobile. So they actually will play these tournaments on their phone. A lot of times you think of US, eSports, you'll see them on PCs, on computers, right? But a lot of the tournaments I've seen when I was doing some searches online, they actually play these tournaments on mobile devices, which I thought was interesting. And it kind of goes back to that whole mobile first mentality, which is good when you think of what they're trying to do with fintech, with e-commerce, with gaming, everything right on your phone at your fingertips for that three-headed monster to work and for that machine to continue to grow. League of Legends has been around for a long time. Now that's the most played PC game with over 100 million active users. Call of Duty Mobile here, this is the one, they do some games with Tencent, their partner Tencent, and they've got these different platforms. So they got Garena PC and Garena Mobile. So here's Free Fire. And if you're not familiar, again, 130 plus markets. They've sold millions and millions of copies. It's very popular globally. I think Fortnite is more popular in the US from my understanding, my experience, but Free Fire is very popular across the globe. So there's a lot of really good information out there. If you want to take a look, you can go and check out the YouTube channel. There's a bunch of cool videos and stuff like that out there. I wanted to show you really quick some of the characters. Here's all the different characters you can play as, quite a few of them here. There's the weapons, and this is actually impressive how many different weapons there are. Of course, this is a freemium model, so it's free to download and to play, but then you have to pay for mods, pay for upgraded weapons, and probably if you want to do good or have fun, you probably are paying. And those games can be very addictive. I personally have been addicted to games like this and spent a lot of money, and a lot of times it's kind of pay to win and not play to win, unfortunately, but it is addictive, it is sticky, and the model's working for them. They're using Free Fire to build confidence with these young consumers and to transfer that into the e-commerce and the fintech side of it. And they make it really simple across the platforms for everything to work seamlessly on a mobile device. So you can see the power of the business model and that three-headed monster when you really dig under the hood. So if you look at this, they do tons of collaborations, which I think is a great way for them to monetize. So this is Street Fighter, global collaboration. They've got a Rampage, New Dawn teaser. They've all this additional content. Like here's this McLaren one on their website, the Free Fire McLaren. The key message here though, guys, there's lots of different ways for them to monetize content, and they can make this very localized and specific to different geographic regions and countries and things like that, and specific user needs. So they use AI to target different people, different personalities, different regions, cultures, all the different things. So they're trying to make this game where they can, plug and play in different parts of the world and monetize it differently, use local celebrities in those regions, things like that. I thought this was helpful just to show you real quick just some of the content with Free Fire in case you're not familiar with the platform. Let's keep moving on. Something I want to really drive home is that Free Fire is a freemium game, so you can play the game for free. Now, in this last quarter, the number of people, the percentage increase that were playing the game was up 61%. Now, the number of people that are paying to play the game, that actually pay to upgrade weapons and things like that, that number is actually up to 80 million users, and that over doubled. So Free Fire is seeing accelerated growth, not only with the number of people that are using the platform, but also the people that decide to upgrade and pay for the platform. Now, Tencent owns 22.9% of Sea's outstanding shares. That's as of March 5th, 2021. So games like League of Legends, Arena of Valor, and Call of Duty Mobile are owned and developed by Tencent. In November of 2018, Sea Limited received a 5-year right of first refusal from Tencent to distribute Tencent's mobile and PC games in Southeast Asia. Now, you could look at that as potentially a threat or a risk as well if they lost that partnership, but you could argue because Tencent owns 22.9% of Sea's business that they have skin in the game and they want them to be successful. So that actually is a really good thing when you think of Tencent owning a part of it. They've partnered with Garena to make them better. They've made them more successful. They've given them exposure to different markets and games. So it's been a very good partnership, and it's been a very good thing having Tencent own 22.9%. It used to be more than that, but there's been dilution. Localization and partnerships for exclusive content. So they do a lot of local celebrity advertising. They do localization where they make the game kind of custom to that area. They do different partnerships that are relevant for different areas, things like that. Now, Southeast Asia's population is young. It's growing really fast, and the income and the spending are both rising, which is a good thing for a company like Sea Limited. I think it's possible for Garena alone, just for this head of the three-headed monster, this pillar, to continue to grow by at least 25% a year until 2025 and maybe even beyond. Next, I want to do something that's going to be really cool. We have quite a few members in our Fired Up Wealth Discord community. You can join that by checking out Fired Up Wealth Patreon and joining, and you can join us on Discord. But we have 15 plus members that are from Singapore. And so what I did is I asked them if they could give me feedback about Sea Limited. Of course, Sea Limited is a Singapore-based company. So I've actually got feedback here from the Discord community, and I'm gonna read it to you. So this first one is from Joe. He's been with us for a long time. He's one of our founding members, and I wanna thank James for putting this together. So he lives in Singapore, and this is his view on Shopee. He says that I used to use Lazada more, but since have done more on Shopee. If the items are available on both platforms, chances are that it'll be cheaper on Shopee, either because of cheaper shipping, more discounts due to their Shopee coins, and the coins are very interesting. It kind of goes back to, if you think of the roots of the company, it's about gaming, right? And getting people addicted to playing games and monetizing that. And they've kind of transferred that over into the e-commerce side of it as well. So they have coins where you can actually do things through social media and basically get hooked and be engaged to get coins, to get discounts on some of their products. So that's something that's really interesting that differentiates them from a lot of their competition. On platforms, Joe says, I prefer Shopee as they will wait for your acknowledgement or confirmation before they release the money to sellers. And I've read this on a couple articles as well. But I have to say, Lazada seems to be coming back. Now, we looked at some stats earlier, and that doesn't seem to be the case, but perception can be a big thing too, because more than likely, Joe and the guys in the community that live in Singapore and the gals, they're getting advertisements from Shopee, from Sea Limited, from local celebrities and things like that that we're not seeing if we live maybe in the United States. So his perception could be, different than what's going on. It could actually be predicting what might happen in the future. It's hard to say, but it's good to get some different perspectives from people that live over in Singapore. Joe also says one thing that Lazada has, which Shopee doesn't, is Red Mart. That's basically online grocery delivery. And Lazada has the tie-up with Tabo, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. I even looked up how to pronounce it. So for those who don't understand Chinese, they can use Lazada. But Shopee has more and more stuff from China as well, and also from Korea. But I'm like Priscilla, no brand loyalty. I'll read Priscilla's next. But Shopee coins kind of keeps you spending more versus, say, trying to collect vouchers on Lazada, which I usually can't get. There's also little difference on the web platform. And depending on who you listen to, I've seen some people tell me that the platforms aren't as good, like they prefer Lazada over Shopee and vice versa. So sometimes it comes down to personal preference. So this next one here is from Priscilla in the group on Discord. I very much prefer the Shopee brand to the Lazada brand. I think Shopee's marketing is top notch and much more localized than Lazada's. And that's true. That's something that Sea Limited really tries to do, is focus on that localization, which I think is an important part of their business model. The monthly themed songs, though irritating, and I don't know what this is, so this is good insight. Gotta admit, they always get stuck in my brain, laugh out loud. It's kind of like TikTok. If you go to TikTok, it's the same viral songs and they get stuck in your brain. And the use of local celebrities, so you name some local celebrities that I'm not familiar with, make the brand very Singaporean and very close to heart. There is a lot of sense of pride, I think, of national pride when it comes to, people from Singapore when I talk to them about Sea Limited. And it is an impressive company, so I could see why that would be the case. Says, not sure if they do the same in their other markets, but in my opinion, they are doing a great job in Singapore. My parents don't do online shopping, but sometimes when they want to get something, they will ask me to go Shopee buy. So it's becoming kind of a verb. They, however, have not recognized Lazada in the same way. So this is interesting, good insight, because we're talking about an older generation here. So Shopee is known to her parents and not necessarily Lazada. Price-wise, generally very similar across both platforms, but I do realize if any differences, there's a 60 to 70% chance that Shopee will be cheaper than Lazada, so we're seeing that theme again. I wonder if the deals are subsidized by Shopee as an attempt to gain market share. Correct. They're sometimes taking losses on some of their products basically to get market share loss leader. It's part of their strategy. Shopee also has a reward coin system, talk about the coins again, whereby the coins you earn from your past purchases can be used to offset against your new purchases, kind of like a rewards program. And a lot of them have loyalty programs, but I think these coins are very unique to Shopee at least from my research. The offset can be small, but it's still a sweetener. It's addictive too, right? The coins are also the reason why I will buy through Shopee if the prices on both platforms are the same. Above said, I have to admit I have no brand loyalty, as I can always make it a point to check both platforms to get the best deal on something I want to buy. The e-commerce space is highly competitive, and I think ultimately what matters most will be the pricings. But here's the thing, the people that are hooked on the Garena side of it and they're using SeaMoney, it's kind of one seamless platform. You know, those three different pillars, they kind of work together very nicely. And so I think that has something going for them. If you're not a gamer, you're just using the e-commerce part of it, you might have a different perspective than maybe if you're a gamer and you're using Free Fire and you're using SeaMoney. I don't know. That's just an observation, perhaps just from some of the research I've done. Andrea says that Sea Limited is also popular in Taiwan, as we saw earlier on the stats. And I'll do one more really quick here. This is from DC. And I want to thank all you guys for providing this feedback, and thank you to James for helping put it together for us. So DC, I've had no issues with shipping and ordering from Shopee at all. I find Shopee cheaper and more user-friendly. Lazada to me is so messy. Shopee also has more deals like the 6 for 6 promo, et cetera, et cetera. Don't know what that is, but good insight. Shopee has done a lot of advertising. I've heard this over and over. They've spent a ton of money on advertising trying to build the brand. Those jingles can be annoying. Here you hear it again. So they've got these songs, I guess, but they really stick with you. Good or bad marketing, it works. Okay. I believe Shopback, a cashback system, can be used for both platforms as it is an external vendor. One thing to note is that Shopee is one of the 3 businesses in SE, of course, the three-headed monster. Lazada doesn't have their gaming arm. Ha 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 ha. Exactly, right? Most of my friends will go to Shopee first. It's like their go-to for e-commerce, and it's become a household name. Lazada used to be good, but they kind of lost it. I don't know why. Maybe the marketing, maybe those jingles. I also believe Shopee has a stronger presence outside of Singapore. Our market is way too tiny. They are bigger in Thailand and Vietnam, I believe. What we saw earlier, that is definitely true, that they are very popular in those countries. So DC concludes by saying, anyways, SE, Sea Limited for the win. SG, Singapore, represent. Thanks, guys. So in conclusion, let me give you my thoughts, the risks, the pros, the cons, everything that I can. I tried to make this video entertaining and concise. I could talk for hours, of course, but I own Sea Limited. I've had it since last summer, thanks to some people in the Fired Up Wealth community from Singapore bring it to my attention. The growth is absolutely amazing. They've been crushing it. So let's talk about some of the risks. Now, some of the risks are actually rewards, and they can go either way. When you think of the leadership is relatively young. It's a threat if they ever leave. You know, you think of Forrest Lee, you know, young guy, he's 43, 44 years old. And of course he can be there for a long time. If he were to transition away, or anybody in the leadership team, it could be a possible threat. I will say that I wanted to cover more about the leadership team. The leadership team is very impressive. Their backgrounds, I mean, it's rock solid, very good leadership team. So that does always build my confidence. I mentioned earlier about the partnership with Tencent, which I think is mostly a plus. Of course, there's a risk that if they pull the plug on their exclusive, you know, deals, the exclusive partnerships that they have, that could be a risk. I think the fact that Tencent has about a 23% stake in Sea Limited, that it's in their best interest to make sure Sea Limited does well. So that part actually is helpful, I think. The risk of that, the flip side, is that you have Chinese voting exposure, which could potentially be a threat or a risk. They do have some intense competition, especially in the e-commerce space, as you've seen through this video series. Again, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out this entire video series. So currency is a risk. You think of all the different currencies they do business with. They have to transfer all that into US dollars. They report in US dollars. So of course, the valuation of those different currencies is always a risk, but that's a risk for any multinational corporation. The valuation risk is arguably the biggest risk because it's very expensive, but it has hyper growth. It's one of those companies that when you look at it, it's expensive, but you can support the valuation. You can argue the valuation because of the hyper growth. It's truly has hyper growth, where some companies have these high valuations and the growth just isn't there. They've proved themselves, quarter after quarter after quarter. It will be interesting to see if any of that growth momentum slows down as COVID goes away in some of these countries. So what do I like about Sea Limited? Well, obviously I'm long the stock. So I like the fact that they're growing, that they have a lot of total addressable market in Southeast Asia. We talked in a previous video about satellite technology, how that can actually help with the internet when you think of internet usage. I like the fact that they're in the 3 different pillars. They've got the gaming, which in my opinion, the gaming is probably the most important part. So if I were to invest in Mercado Libre, e-commerce is a big part of the business, but one of the things that's most appealing to me for Mercado Libre is going to be the fintech part of their business. Now with Sea Limited, I think it's actually Garena that's most exciting, although there's a lot of total addressable market with the other heads of the monster when you think of Shopee and you think of SeaMoney. So all 3 of those are exciting, innovative technology type spaces that you want to be in, secular growth trends. And this company represents all 3 of those in one company, in one holding company, which is great. They actually do have a decent balance sheet. Of course, high levels of recurring revenue, which I love to see. Of course, I love SaaS. This isn't SaaS, but it does have recurring revenue streams, which I always like. It's a lot better for me as an investor. And you think of just Southeast Asia, you think of that demographic. They're making more money. They're very young. They're spending more money. You think of Latin America expanding now into Chile and Colombia, growing more in Brazil, into Mexico. There's just a lot of excitement when you think of all the different markets and the total addressable market globally in all these different countries they're representing. I think that the company actually could grow into cash flow, but right now, of course, it's burning cash like crazy. It's bleeding cash, and it doesn't seem realistic it'll be profitable anytime soon. As long as they can continue to grow the business and show me amazing growth numbers, I'm okay with that cash burn. But at some point, of course, they're going to have to try to turn that corner and become a more mature business like an Amazon did, several years back when it kind of converted into a more profitable company. And Amazon, of course, doesn't have the hyper growth, but it's trading at a much more attractive valuation now. At one point, Amazon had a crazy price to sales ratio, like Mercado Libre does, like Sea Limited does. So right now, a price of sales on Sea Limited is somewhere around 25. The price per share is about $275. That price to sales ratio is about 25. And you look at an Amazon trading at $3,383 a share today, and the price to sales ratio is about 4.13. So quite a big difference there. You're obviously paying for that hyper growth. Amazon's my top holding. So I like Amazon and I like it at this price. I think it's going higher. If you're looking for international growth, Sea Limited, I think, is a great play. It's somewhat speculative just because of its valuation, but I do own it long term. I do like the stock, and I do think that the company will continue to do well. So that's it for today, guys. I appreciate you watching. Please do subscribe, hit the like button. The like button helps me a lot. It helps the algorithm. Drop me a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. Check out the other platforms. We've got Patreon. We've got Discord. We've got Twitter. We've got Facebook. We've got TikTok, everything. Check them out. Everything's just at Fired Up Wealth. Thanks for your time and attention. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.